Book 1, The Blazing Ronin, Wandering Blades. Chapter 5, The Ninja Encounter. The rising sun cast long shadows across the forest road as Akira and his fledgling band of village warriors made their way westward. In the days since the fateful battle against Lord Ito's samurai, more had joined the Ronin's cause from surrounding hamlets and townships. Word was spreading like a wildfire through the northern provinces. A mysterious warrior wielding unnatural powers had risen, rallying the people against the tyranny and darkness that had begun seeping into the land. Though few knew the true extent of Akira's abilities or the ancient evils he sought to combat. As for the young Ronin himself, he walked at the head of the procession with Kaya at his side. The fierce determination she had shown in pledging herself to his quest had earned her a place of honor, despite Akira's initial misgivings about involving her directly in the coming conflicts. "You seem distracted this morning," the young woman said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "Is something weighing on your mind?" Akira was silent for a moment before responding, his deep voice tinged with reluctance. "I cannot help but dwell on the path that lies before us. What we are preparing to face is an ancient, primordial evil the likes of which this world has not witnessed in thousands of years." He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "Are we truly ready? Even with the clarity and power granted to me by the old ones, I cannot help but fear we may be hopelessly outmatched." Kaya regarded her mysterious companion for a long moment before reaching out and giving his arm a reassuring squeeze. "You may be the Blazing Ronin, Akira, but even legends were once just mortals facing impossible odds. If anyone can overcome the darkness that threatens us, it is you." The young warrior felt his lips quirk upwards in a slight smile. He opened his mouth to respond when a strange, tingling sensation suddenly washed over him. Like his entire body had been submerged in icy water. Akira froze, his hand instinctively dropping to the hilt of his katana as his eyes scanned their surroundings. The rest of the villagers had also stopped, looking around in confusion and growing apprehension. "What's happening?" one of the men called out in a hushed voice. "I feel strange. Like the air itself has shifted." "Silence," the Ronin commanded, his deep voice laced with intensity. "We are being watched. Hunted." No sooner had the words left his lips than a dozen shadowy forms seemed to materialize from the underbrush around them. Akira's eyes widened as he recognized the unmistakable silhouettes of ninja warriors, their bodies clad in form-fitting black garb, faces obscured by masks and cowls. In a blur of motion, the mysterious assassins surged forward, a volley of shuriken and throwing knives filling the air. The Ronin moved with blinding speed, his katana becoming a whirling cyclone of emerald steel as he deflected the lethal projectiles away from his warriors. "Form up and protect the villagers," he shouted over the din of battle. "These ninja are incredibly skilled, do not underestimate them." Kaya and the others hastened to obey, falling into a defensive ring with their backs to one another as more shuriken rained down. Akira continued batting them aside with almost contemptuous ease, his blade a blur of motion. "Show yourselves, assassins," the Ronin bellowed, his deep voice resonating with intensity. "Face me directly and be judged." As if in response, one of the shadowy figures broke from the tree-line, vaulting overhead in an incredible display of acrobatics. Akira's eyes widened as he recognized the unmistakable silhouette of a kunoichi, a female ninja warrior. She twisted lithely in mid-air, a pair of wicked kama scythes leading in a deadly cross-strike aimed at the Ronin's head. Akira dropped into a crouch, allowing the blades to slash through where his neck had been a split second before. Pivoting on the ball of his foot, the young warrior launched himself into a spinning slash. But the kunoichi was already moving, dancing back out of reach with a series of backflips and handsprings that would have been the envy of any circus performer. "You are incredibly skilled, warrior," a feminine voice called out in lightly accented Japanese. "But you are outmatched here. Surrender now, and your death will be mercifully swift." Akira narrowed his eyes, shifting his feet to brace against the kunoichi's next attack. "I do not know what quarrel you and your assassins have with me. But I will not be intimidated by your threats. Then you are a fool, the woman retorted, her voice hardening. We are the Crimson Lotus, Lord Ito's personal guard of ninja assassins. And you have made an enemy of our master this day. With a shout, she launched herself forward in a blinding flurry of spinning kama strikes. Akira met her head-on, his katana becoming a blur of emerald steel as he parried and deflected each wickedly fast attack with the absolute minimum of movement and effort. The kunoichi seemed to falter for just a moment, her eyes widening behind her mask at the Ronin's incredible skill and speed. But she did not relent, raining down a blistering series of slashes and thrusts that would have felled a lesser warrior in seconds. Akira, however, flowed between each strike like water around a rock. He could sense the frustration building in his opponent as her attacks continued to be deflected with almost contemptuous ease. Finally, the kunoichi broke off, backflipping away to put distance between them as she panted for breath. The Ronin regarded her calmly, his blade held at the ready. You fight with incredible skill and ferocity, he stated, his deep voice tinged with reluctant admiration. But your anger and aggression blind you. You cannot defeat that which you cannot hit. The woman snarled something vicious in response before gesturing sharply. In an instant, the rest of her ninja assassins broke from their concealed positions, surrounding Akira and his warriors in a deadly ring of blades and cold, merciless stares. Then we will cut you down together, blazing Ronin, the kunoichi spat, raising her kamas in preparation for another attack. Lord Ito will have your head as a trophy for defying him. Akira's expression hardened, his grip tightening around his katana's hilt as he prepared to meet their onslaught. He opened his mouth to respond when a strange, warbling battle cry split the air. A massive form came hurtling through the trees, slamming into the ground with an impact that shook the very earth. The ninja assassins scattered in shock and confusion as the dust settled, revealing a towering, heavily muscled warrior garbed in ornate crimson armor. Despite his imposing size, the man moved with the grace of a panther, a pair of wicked kanabo maces spinning in his calloused hands. He leveled his gaze at the assembled ninja, his expression unreadable behind his fearsome mask. The Crimson Lotus, he rumbled in a deep, resonant voice. I should have known you treacherous snakes would be involved in this latest ploy against my lord. The kunoichi seemed to recover her composure first, whirling to face the armored giant with her kamas raised defensively. Kozue the Ravager, she spat, her voice laced with contempt. What business do you have here, interfering in Lord Ito's affairs? I could ask you the same, assassin, the warrior rumbled, his maces continuing their deadly arcs. My lord commanded me to hunt down the blazing Ronin, not watch his personal guard make fumbling attempts at the same. Akira tensed, his gaze flicking between the two opposing forces as the tension in the air became almost palpable. Kozue seemed to notice him for the first time, his eyes narrowing behind his mask. Ah, so you are the one who has been sowing chaos across my lord's lands. The mysterious warrior who defeated his elite samurai with strange powers. The towering man's stance shifted slightly, his maces slowing to a stop as he leveled his full attention on Akira. I have been sent to judge your guilt, Ronin. And if you are found wanting, to separate your head from your shoulders as an example to any who would defy Lord Ito's rule. The kunoichi let out a harsh bark of laughter, gesturing for her ninja to hold their positions. It seems we have a common foe, Ravager. For now. Why don't you sit back and watch how true warriors operate? With a shout, she launched herself at Akira once more, her kamas leading in a blinding series of slashes and thrusts. The Ronin met her head-on, his katana becoming a blur of emerald steel as their blades clashed in a dizzying dance of death. The kunoichi's kama scythes were a whirling dervish of razor-sharp steel, raining down from every conceivable angle in a blistering flurry of strikes. But Akira remained calm and focused, his emerald katana weaving intricate patterns as he deflected each lethal attack. The young warrior could sense the frustration and growing desperation in his opponent's movements as her assault continued to be neutralized. He allowed her to vent her aggression, waiting patiently for the inevitable mistake that would present itself. It came in the form of a fainting high slash, drawing Akira's guard upwards for the briefest of moments. In that split second of vulnerability, the kunoichi launched herself into a spinning heel kick aimed squarely at the Ronin's midsection. But Akira was already moving, dropping into a low pivot and allowing the powerful strike to whistle past his head. As the woman's attack overextended, he lashed out with a vicious upward slash of his own. There was a meaty thunk as the razor-sharp katana bit into the kunoichi's side, punching through her armored bodysuit in a spray of crimson. She let out a strangled cry, backpedaling wildly to put distance between them as she clutched the grievous wound. Impossible! The woman hissed through gritted teeth, her eyes burning with hatred behind her mask. How could you have seen that coming? Akira straightened, leveling his blade at the injured assassin as he regarded her impassively. Your skills are impressive, kunoichi. But you fight with too much anger, too much aggression. It blinds you to the true path of the warrior, patience, discipline, inner focus. He allowed his words to linger for a moment before continuing. Surrender now, and you may yet live to learn from your mistakes this day. Continue down this path, and you will only find oblivion at the end. The woman snarled something vile in response, raising her kamas in preparation for another attack. But before she could launch herself forward, the towering form of Kozue the Ravager stepped between them. Enough of this foolishness, the crimson armored giant rumbled, leveling his maces at the kunoichi in a clear threat. The blazing Ronin is mine to judge, by order of Lord Ito himself. You and your snakes have already failed in your mission. The assassin tensed, her eyes flicking between Akira and the imposing warrior as her mind raced. Finally, after a tense moment, she gave a slight nod and straightened. Very well, Ravager. This one is yours, for now. But make no mistake, we are not finished here. With a flick of her wrist, a dense cloud of smoke erupted around the kunoichi's feet. By the time it cleared, she and her ninja assassins had vanished, melting back into the forest's shadows as if they were never there. Kozue watched them depart with an air of disdain before turning his full attention to Akira and his warriors. The towering man's eyes seemed to glow from within the depths of his fearsome mask as he studied them appraisingly. So, you are the one they call the Blazing Ronin, he rumbled at last. The mysterious warrior who defeated Lord Ito's elite samurai before disappearing like a wraith in the night. The giant shifted his stance slightly, his maces beginning their deadly arcs once more. I was tasked with hunting you down, separating truth from rumor about your strange abilities. And if the stories proved accurate. He allowed his words to linger meaningfully. To deliver your head back to my lord on a pike as a warning to any other foolish enough to defy him. A tense silence fell over the forest road as Kozue leveled his maces at Akira, the weighted chains hissing through the air. The Ronin could sense the palpable aura of power radiating from the crimson armored giant. This was no ordinary warrior, but a master of his craft. I do not wish to trade insults or make hollow boasts of skill, the young warrior stated, his deep voice resonating with calm intensity. If you have come to judge me, Ravager, then let our blades speak for us. Kozue seemed to consider his words for a moment before giving a slow nod of acknowledgement. As you wish, Ronin. Though I warn you, underestimating me would be a fatal mistake. I am the greatest warrior in Lord Ito's service for good reason. With a resounding boom like a thunderclap, the giant launched himself forward with shocking speed for one of his immense size. His kanabo maces became blurs of whirling steel, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. Akira braced himself, his emerald katana angled horizontally before him as he awaited the Ravager's attack. The first mace came scorching in like a cannon shot, far too fast for the eye to track. But the Ronin's blade was already in motion, parrying the strike in a shower of sparks with such force that the shockwave rattled the trees around them. Kozue's eyes widened briefly behind his mask before he launched a blistering series of combination strikes from every conceivable angle. Undeterred, Akira flowed between each thunderous attack with the grace of a master, his katana weaving intricate patterns of emerald steel. He parried, deflected, and redirected the Ravager's relentless onslaught, never overextending or leaving himself open to a counterattack. Kozue seemed to falter for a moment, his assault slowing as he struggled to find an opening in the Ronin's defenses. Sensing the shift in momentum, Akira launched himself into a blindingly fast series of counterattacks of his own. His katana became a prismatic blur, raining down from every angle in a dizzying dance of death. The Ravager backpedaled, struggling to keep the young warrior's blade at bay through a combination of desperate parries and sheer brute strength. With a mighty roar of exertion, Kozue brought both his maces crashing down in a thunderous overhead smash. But Akira was already moving, sidestepping the earth-shaking strike and whirling into a low pivot. His katana lashed out in a horizontal arc, catching the giant's leading knee with the razor-sharp edge. There was a sickening crunch of bone and sinew as the Ravager's leg buckled beneath him, dropping him to one knee with a strangled cry of anguish. Akira rose in a smooth motion, the point of his blade hovering just before the crimson-armored warrior's throat as their eyes met. "Yield, Kozue," the Ronin intoned, his deep voice laced with lethal intensity. "You are a skilled warrior, but outmatched here. I will grant you the mercy of walking away with your life this day." The towering man worked his jaw for a moment, his eyes burning with impotent rage and humiliation. Finally, he gave a slow, begrudging nod of surrender. "This is not over, Ronin," Kozue growled, leaning back slightly as Akira lowered his blade. "Lord Ito will have your head for this insult, mark my words." The young warrior regarded the Ravager impassively for a moment before responding. "If your lord wishes to continue sending his lapdogs after me, so be it. I will cut them all down without hesitation or mercy until he learns some semblance of honor." With those words, Akira turned and began striding back towards Kaya and his warriors, leaving the seething Kozue to tend his wounds. The young woman looked at him with a mixture of awe and concern as he approached. "Akira, what happened? Who was that warrior? What did he want?" The Ronin was silent for a long moment before responding, his expression unreadable. "A harbinger of what is to come, Kaya. A reminder that there are powerful forces aligned against us on this path." Akira allowed his words to linger meaningfully as his gaze swept over the gathered villagers. He could see the apprehension, the fear creeping into their eyes as the reality of what they had pledged themselves to slowly set in. "Lord Ito is merely a symptom of the disease that has taken root across these lands," the Ronin continued, his deep voice resonating with conviction. "Greed, corruption, dishonor, they fester like an untreated wound, spreading their poison further every day." He leveled his piercing emerald stare at each of them in turn, his expression intense but not unkind. "I will not lie to you, my friends. The path we walk will be fraught with peril the likes of which you cannot imagine. We will face opponents of incredible skill and power who have fully embraced the encroaching darkness." Akira held up his hand, forestalling the murmurs of trepidation that had begun rippling through the crowd. "But you need only look upon me to see that there is hope. That for every disciple of shadow and chaos, there are still a few who wield the light of discipline, honor, and inner fire." The young warrior slowly drew his katana, the brilliant emerald blade seeming to shimmer and pulse with ethereal energy. He leveled the point towards the heavens, his expression one of intense focus and determination. "This is my vow to you all, though the path ahead is shrouded in darkness, I will be the guiding flame that leads us through to the other side. No matter what ancient evils or sinister forces we face, I will not falter until balance has been restored to these lands." Akira's emerald gaze seemed to burn even brighter as he stared down the length of his blade. "For I am the Blazing Ronin, a force of order in an increasingly chaotic world. And my katana will carve a path through the shadows, no matter how dense they become." A heavy silence fell over the gathered villagers as the weight of the Ronin's words washed over them. Kaya was the first to step forward, her expression hardening with renewed determination as she met Akira's intense stare unflinchingly. You have my sword, Blazing Ronin, she stated firmly. If even a fraction of the ancient legends about you are true, then our world needs a true hero to guide us through the darkness, now more than ever before. One by one, the rest of the villagers began stepping forward as well, raising their own weapons or makeshift arms in solidarity. Akira regarded this gathering force, his expression softening ever so slightly as he gave a slow nod of acknowledgement. Then from this day forth, you all shall be known as the Blazing Vanguard, he intoned, his deep voice resonating with quiet power. Together, we will seek out the root of the corruption that has taken hold and purge it from these lands with steel and fire. The Ronin turned, leveling his piercing gaze out towards the forest road ahead as he rested his katana across his shoulder. For too long, the forces of darkness have had free rein to spread their taint unopposed. But a new flame has been lit, and it will burn away the shadows, no matter their form or origin. Akira began striding forward, Kaya and the rest of the vanguard falling into step behind him as the morning sun broke through the canopy overhead. Though the path ahead was cloaked in uncertainty, the young warrior's conviction burned brighter than ever before. He was the Blazing Ronin. And the shadow's days were numbered. The journey passed in relative quiet over the next few days as Akira led the Blazing Vanguard westward. He had shared little about their ultimate destination, but the hard, determined set to his jaw spoke volumes. The Ronin was a man possessed, driven by a singular purpose that allowed for no distractions or delays. He pushed them to make long marches with only brief periods of rest, keeping a watchful eye out for any potential threats. It was on the fifth day that their path finally took them out of the dense woodlands and into the foothills of an imposing mountain range. Akira slowed their pace, his emerald eyes narrowing as he scanned the craggy peaks looming before them. "We make camp here for the night," he stated, his deep voice laced with an undercurrent of intensity. "And prepare yourselves, for tomorrow, we brave the Valley of Oblivion." The villagers looked at each other uneasily at the ominous declaration, but knew better than to question the Ronin's decisions. As the vanguard began setting up their rudimentary camp, Kaya approached Akira where he stood like a sentinel, his gaze still fixed on the mountains. "The Valley of Oblivion," she asked hesitantly. "I have never heard of such a place. What awaits us there?" Akira was silent for a long moment before responding, seemingly choosing his words carefully. "It is an ancient, sacred place of incredible power, though its true nature and origins have been lost over the centuries. All I know is that it may hold the answers I have been seeking about the emerald cataclysm that decimated my lord's army all those years ago." The young woman felt a shiver run down her spine at the intensity in the Ronin's voice. She studied his profile, her brow furrowing slightly as her eyes traced the pulsing, arcane markings that covered his skin in intricate whorls and patterns. "Akira, what happened to you after that day?" Kaya asked carefully. "Where did you acquire such abilities? Such power?" The young warrior exhaled a slow breath, turning to face his companion fully. His piercing emerald gaze seemed to bore straight into her soul, shining with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. "You wish to know the truth of how I became the Blazing Ronin?" he asked, his deep voice taking on a strange, reverberating quality. "Of the sacrifices I have made, the prices I have paid to walk this path." Kaya opened her mouth to respond, but found herself rendered momentarily mute by the sheer force of Akira's presence. She could only manage a slight nod, her throat suddenly dry with trepidation. The Ronin held her gaze for a long moment before giving a slow nod of his own. When he spoke again, his words carried the weight of ancient power and truth. "Very well. Gather the others and prepare a fire. If we are to brave the valley together on the morrow, you must all know exactly what you have pledged yourselves to." As night fell over the mountain foothills, the Blazing Vanguard settled around the crackling campfire. Akira stood before them, his emerald katana resting across his shoulders as his intense gaze swept over the gathered warriors. "You have all sworn yourselves to my cause, to combat the growing darkness that threatens to consume these lands," he began, his deep voice resonating with quiet power. But none of you truly understand the scope of what we face. The ancient, primordial evils that have been awakened. The Ronin allowed his words to linger for a moment before continuing. The path I walk is one of redemption and restoration of balance. But it is also one of great sacrifice and hardship, the likes of which you cannot begin to fathom. Slowly, reverently, Akira drew his sword. The brilliant emerald blade seemed to shimmer and pulse with ethereal energy in the firelight, casting kaleidoscopic shadows dancing across the entranced villagers' faces. I was not born the blazing Ronin, the young warrior stated, his voice taking on a strange dual timbre that reverberated through their very souls. I was forged in the fires of cataclysm and reborn as a force of order in an increasingly chaotic world. The entranced villagers could only watch in stunned silence as arcane emerald flames suddenly erupted across Akira's body. The pulsing, intricate markings that covered his skin in twisting patterns flared to blinding life, bathing the entire camp in an otherworldly jade radiance. It was 3 years ago that my life was forever altered, the Ronin continued, his voice resonating with the weight of ancient power. I was a samurai in the service of Lord Yashida, a noble and just ruler who embodied the true tenets of Bushido. As he spoke, visions began taking shape amidst the swirling emerald flames. The villagers saw vast armies clashing, the ringing steel of hundreds of katanas filling the air as Akira cut a swath through the enemy ranks,